Hello, and we are taping live at the International Christian Retailer Show in Denver, Colorado. And we are thrilled to have Marcus Ryan stop by to visit with us today. And we are going to be talking about your first, I should say your first book. You've written academic books,
yes, I have.
But this is your first mass market book.
Yes, it is.
And this is called Restless Journey. And I'm very excited about this book, and we're just thrilled to have you here.
Thank you.
And why don't you sort of share a little bit of your background just for our viewers, and also let us know what kind of brought you to the point in writing this book.
Sure. My background has been for the last 20 years or so in media production, media research. My academic degrees were in new media and in how people of faith use the media.
Right.
And so in that journey, in that process, in those jobs, I've rubbed elbows with a lot of different people. And one particular person, a lady, was really had a great deal of consternation because she had been mischaracterized. She had a focus group conducted up in the Northeast, and one person up in Bangor, Maine, or wherever it was, said something about, you know, she had spinach in her teeth or something.
Some horrible negative thing.
Yeah, it was just kind of this off-the-cuff remark. But what happened in a strange way was carried into the workplace. And the people around her began to say, well, if that person thought it, then maybe you are like that.
Right.
And she could not shake that image.
Right, the perception.
The perception, the mischaracterization. She kept trying to correct them. And finally, she was telling my wife, she said, I just have to go home where people know me. And I started thinking about that, and I realized that she wasn't going home as if she wanted to tell people who she was, this big celebrity.
Right.
She wanted them to tell her who she was because she had lost her identity.
Right.
And I began to realize, you know what, that's is that just a woman's issue? You know, and in my mind at that time I thought it was.
And your home identifies you. It's where your identity starts. So
at that point I was kind of things were going pretty well in my life. I think I had finished my PhD and I'd been working on other things, and I felt like things were going well. But all of a sudden, out of the blue, there was this kind of a churning, a restlessness. It's almost like an unsettledness, you know?
I was just going to say, just nothing's kind of satisfying.
Yeah.
Nothing's just,
And it was bizarre because things were fine. And, you know, I had the same similar feeling years before when things weren't fine, when things were not going well.
Yeah, why am I identifying this emotion right now? Yeah, what's going on?
It was as if and I know thinking back then, it was as if I felt, well, when things are going well, I won't have that unsettledness. I'll have a sense of satisfaction.
Right.
But you know what? It didn't matter whether things were going well, things were going poorly. There was not a sense of satisfaction.
Right.
And I began to realize, and what made me think about, I brought the story up about the lady that was mischaracterized, as I began to process that and think, is there a reason, is there something beyond what I have around me, the accoutrements, the things that support me, whether it's degrees or my wife or my kid, is there something beyond that?
Right.
Interestingly, it's something inside of that. I began to think about that idea of being known, and I began to process the idea maybe I didn't even know myself.
Right. You start questioning who you are.
You do.
Okay, what defines me? How did I get here? And I know you address that in the book. I love how you open the book. I love how you open that kind of at a funeral. And it is, I could see where you're leading right now. Like kind of you come to that point in your life and go, is there more?
Yes.
And you sort of open up with that whole analogy of this funeral and this man who was a celebrity, I believe it.
Yes, he was.
Kind of going, who defines this? And all of a sudden the people that show up are really, is this all he was to these people?
The characters in the sitcom.
Yeah, it's
That's
kind of, you start asking sort of the hard questions. Am I really as cool as I at least thought I was, or do I have it as together as I think I do? And again, I know we were talking earlier before we got onto tape about how men define themselves and really where that satisfaction comes from. And now, have you been a Christian at this point in time?
I've been a Christian my whole life. Now, ups and downs, bobs and weaves, as we've all had in that process. But it wasn't. But it's interesting, the idea of being mischaracterized. I think in a way that we not only feel like we've been mischaracterized, but we begin to realize that we've mischaracterized ourselves. And in that process, we're not sure who we are, and in fact, we begin to sense that we're almost farther away. Who is that man that God made me to be, and how do I get to him? It's almost a scary feeling. And you realize, if I could just become that person, that unsettledness would be gone, you know? And then the sense that, you know what, if I'm feeling unsettled when I'm mischaracterized, and if I mischaracterize myself, then I'm also mischaracterizing other people, and this is what got me. Then perhaps I'm mischaracterizing God and the way God sees me.
And how does God, exactly, how does God, how does my relationship with God define who I am, and where does it fall on the priority scale? And I know, you know, with men, and again, this book is definitely, I enjoyed reading it from a woman's perspective, absolutely. But for men, you guys are wired differently. You guys define yourselves differently. We, women are defined completely different. But I have to say, men are defined by their career.
They are.
By their bank accounts, those sorts of things, which are very materialistic.
Yes.
We're defined more by that maternal kind of side. And for men, it's a lot more, I guess, the kind of that corporate side. Who am I? How did I make it? What are people going to perceive of me? And I noticed that this book really does tap into sort of the men kind of going into that midlife crisis, starting to question what's real and what's not real, and how, do I go get the cool car? Do I leave my wife for the younger woman? What do I do? What's going to satisfy this? It's all that searching, and that's what I loved about the title, Restless Journey. It is a journey. It's searching to find, where do I find that satisfaction? And you coming at being a Christian, I'm sure probably had a little bit more insight. You could identify that restlessness.
Yes.
And probably know who to go to.
But it took a while to get there, and it's interesting because I love the journey. I just don't want to be restless.
Right.
You know what I mean? And the restlessness is something that, is that the baggage of an alpha male? Do you have to be restless to be an alpha male, And
that's just my type A.
Yeah.
I just have to go drive. Is that my drive?
That's what makes it work. And you know what? Restlessness is good, because what restlessness does, it helps you identify the fact that you're not good. Something is still missing. So whether you have all the things, it's still missing, or you don't have anything and it's still missing. And what you begin to realize is if I can reach a point where, well, look at what the way Paul did, the apostle. He said that the man who loves God is known by God. And I began to realize, you know what, when I get to I don't want to wait till the very end of my life to realize I missed it. And I don't want to go into the next life hearing Jesus say, depart from me, I never knew you.
Right.
So I began to realize, you know what, being known by God is pretty important.
Yeah, and it could be pretty awesome too. I mean, the impact of that is, it redefines who you are. It defines on what you should be doing, the purpose in your life, and where you should be.
Yes.
The boundaries that you set, and when you come into contact, whether it's business or within a marriage and your family, you start to realize, okay, wow, that's a neat revelation. That this is, how can I look at this? So I think that reading through that, and I know you were sharing some of the comments, and why don't you share some of those from the men from various ages, because even though I think it touches upon men sort of hitting that midlife crisis, I think that for my female perspective of men, your 20s, you're not so concerned with your career. You're still stuck back in the college days, fraternity, this early day, your party age stage, whatever it is in the 20s. 30s, some of you are getting married, you're starting to get serious, your career choices start to identify. All of a sudden, you hit the 40s, and it's like, was this it?
Yeah.
Is this where I go? What is this? And it's just
how to recover.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And it's funny you bring that young age up, because I'm thinking the point of departure for most men is around that age. Late teens, mid-late teens, early 20s. You don't realize you're beginning to separate from the man God made you to be. Bishop Fulton Sheen once said that if you wouldn't be so thirsty if you had never tasted water.
Right.
And I think the reason men are restless is because they were known one time. Before they were born, before they're in the womb, while in the depths of the earth, God said, I knew who you were. So we've been known before. We know what it feels like. So we begin this journey, and somewhere we begin to detach from that feeling, and we don't feel like we're known anymore.
Right.
And so then we don't realize we don't feel that. We just think we need to find something else.
Right.
And all those things are good. The job is good. The wife is good. The kids are good.
Right.
Friends are great. But they will only they will only bring about a feeling of significance to the degree to which you feel like you're known.
Right.
And if you feel like you are known by God, by your wife, by your family, by a couple of friends, not everybody, it's not a bunch of friends, party guys, it's a few men over time.
Right.
All of a sudden, you feel like, you know what, I may not have the celebrity, or maybe I do, or the notoriety, or the standing, or the reputation, or the Porsche, or all those things, or if I do have those, they only have meaning if I'm known. And if I'm known, then I infuse those others with meaning.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. And kind of to maybe extrapolate that on a little more. Again, women, when there's a crisis or when we start questioning things, we tend to turn outward. We tend to go to our friends. Like,
Great point.
I can't deal with this, and whatever. We just all get together and do our thing. Men turn inward.
Man, you're good.
They do not
That's so true.
They don't want to share that. They do not want to it's like, I'm going to figure this out on my own.
Yeah.
This is what it's all about. I'm going to go figure this out.
You don't want to be discovered.
No,
men turn in because they don't want to be discovered.
Right.
I'll put in the words of a friend of mine when he started reading the book. He disagreed. He said men do not want to be known. They want to be unknown. They do not want to be discovered for being a lesser man than they are. And so I thought, that is so true.
I can see it from
the
that
characterization. And at the end of the book, he said, okay, I'm convinced. I do want to be known. I'm afraid of being known.
Right.
But being known is the anecdote for the restlessness and for the being mischaracterized.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and it's almost a question of vulnerability too, because in order to be known, you have to let yourself.
Yes.
You have to put it out there. You have to let people know who you are. You have to be able to be transparent.
Yeah.
And then you got to work around that. There are very few men over time who have learned how to cultivate that tight-knit group of friends. And it can be 3 or 4 friends. It could be one friend. But you have to have that outlet. You have to have somebody who knows you for you are. Because if you don't, you really have nowhere to go.
But you're insightful because you're pointing out the difference between men and women very well. And you point out it may be 1 man or maybe 3 men. And men feel like women try to shove them into these groups, these accountability groups.
I was going to say, the church doesn't really help. All of a sudden, it's like, honey, and I know so many of my wives, they're like, oh, we've moved many times. And they're like, you guys should really get hooked into a church. Because then we get hooked into a church. Like, John, your husband should really, go check out the men's group. And I'm thinking, maybe if one of these men might just go play tennis with them and not do the whole, I've got to do the group thing. Guys don't do that.
You know what? They don't. But the strangest thing is, people say, be accountable, be vulnerable. Don't be vulnerable. Be authentic.
That's
be
a
genuine.
Great word. That is such a great word.
And that is important. And as you are authentic and genuine, people around you in a bigger group will be drawn to you. 1, maybe 2 guys over a couple of years, and then you'll sense their authenticity as well. But don't be vulnerable with a bunch of strangers. You know,
well,
that is the worst thing. And yet we tell them to do that all the time.
Yes, I'm needy. I'm a needy man.
My wife told me to tell you that I have a problem with. Yes,
definitely. But that is a good. The difference between the vulnerability and also to kind of be able to get out there, because I think if you're authentic, and that is a fabulous word, because you're going to find instantly, then you will attract someone else who there's a bond.
Yes.
You'll find the commonality very quickly. But if you're trying to be something, then again, you're not doing yourself any favors.
No, you're not.
You're still trying to, come to grips with the fact that you don't know who you are. You can at least even be authentic about that. We're new. We've just moved here. We don't know anything about you. We don't even know anything about this church. We're still trying it all out. Or, but any relationship, because I think coming from a corporate background and media, you can also, you understand the dynamics of business. And that's very, men work different in business too. It's a little, they have their different ways of going up the corporate ladder, achieving their objectives. And, if you don't have really that authentic bond with a friend and someone who can really give you the wisdom, not tell you what you want to hear, but tell you what you need to hear, and that honesty.
You lose yourself so fast.
It just, at the end of the day, it's very easy. And we have friends that we've watched hit that point in their life, and they don't even know how they got there.
Right.
They wake up one morning, and it's like, how did I get here?
How did I get here? Yeah.
How did I get to this point where I just could care less about anything? And, and they look for all the answers. And I think, coming from the perspective of a Christian, putting God as the top priority to define who you are as a man.
Yes.
Even through, God's eyes. If there was one thing that you could say to men, okay, this is the bit of wisdom that in this book, this is what I want you to take away from. If you skim it, or if you can't get through all the chapters, whatever it is, but if this is the one thing that you need to understand about the Restless Journey, what would that be?
It's just to put it in a nutshell, it is, as you begin life, God knows who you are. As you walk away from yourself, you're walking away and away from the man God made you to be.
Right.
You do not want to end this life so far away that you do not even know who you're supposed to be, and there's no time to go back and reclaim it. That's not saying you're not going to make it into eternity as a Christian, or have a relationship with God. You could do that and still be maligned from yourself. My point is very simple, that the restlessness is a tool to remind you that there's a resolution that needs to take place. And that resolution, it can take place as whether you start with God and say, God, I really want to open myself and say, you know what, I want to know who I am in you, or I want to know you. And you start with God, or you might start with your wife and understand that she's on a journey to be known. And she's going to give you insights about yourself that you wouldn't otherwise have. Or maybe it's a couple of guys. I call it the corner. It's just 2 or 3 guys. It's in the corner of the boxing ring.
I love that, though. I love that, because it really is. It's kind of, you create your little safe haven.
You do.
Create your safe haven, and I love it.
But they know you better than you know yourself sometimes.
Yeah,
don't they?
yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for stopping by. And this book is going to be available September
1st.
September 1st. I'm going to hold this up here. This is Restless Journey, and this will be available in stores on September 1st. And I look forward to this really coming out. I've already got sort of a little list going in my mind of. It's a great book to pass on. I really enjoy the insightfulness and the delivery. Very concise. It's an easy read, but it's very, not to diminish the the powerfulness of the message. But I thought this is easy. This is
good.
Men
Couple
get
ideas.
this.
Yeah.
Men are. You guys are just give it to me black and white. Just don't sugarcoat it. We're so different, men and women. But anyway, thank you so
grateful
much.
To be on your
we have
program.
absolutely appreciated you stopping by.
All right.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.